Before we dive in, I have some exciting news to share. From July 25th to August 4th, we are launching a special event called Christmas for Kids. This is an 11-day giving campaign with a goal of raising $25,000 to benefit the Bridge House. The funds will support their mission to lead youth out of homelessness and empower them to live transformative lives. If you feel inspired to give, please visit thebridgehousetn.org and click on Give. We truly appreciate your support in this important mission.
Waiting for the sunshine.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Live One for One, where we have conversations that challenge us to live a life that will change a life. My name is John, and I have an amazing lady here and new friend, Jamie Eastlick, all the way from Alaska. Yes. Jamie, what's up?
We're at the 23 hours of sunlight up here, so that's amazing.
Oh my gosh. So right now, there's sunlight 24/7.
Yeah, it gets a little dusky, kind of what you guys might see about 6:37, and then it
Okay.
goes right back to daylight.
So what do you do to kind of deal with that? I mean, do you guys have the blackout on all your windows, or
We have
what's
we
that
have the
like?
blackout. Got the
Okay.
blackout. Before blackout was a thing, we us Alaskans had the tinfoil. You put that over your
Yeah, the
windows.
tinfoil. Okay.
We all look like alien conspiracy theories people, but we're not.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's crazy. So did that take you, because are you originally from Alaska, or where are you originally from?
Yes. Well, I was born in California, but my parents moved me and my sister up here when I was only like 3 months old. So it's kind of like all I've
Okay.
known when it comes to living.
Oh,
I go on
wow.
vacations, but yeah, no,
Yeah.
this is home, Kenai, Alaska.
Wow, that's crazy. And tell me, like, what is the culture like where you're at? Is it, I mean, kind of small town, everybody knows everybody kind of deal, or?
It is extremely small town here, and I love it.
Okay.
I live in a town where for every like Flag Day, every Memorial Day, like they're putting flags on all the light posts. We
Oh,
Christmas
wow.
time, there's like the Christmas lights on all the light posts. It's
Yeah.
a really amazing
Wow.
place to live, actually,
That's cool.
and
That's
visit
cool.
if you guys want to come.
Yeah, I've heard that. Well, you know what's crazy is my brother-in-law. He is from well, he's not from there. He was in the military, and so he was in Anchorage, and for quite some time. How far away is that from you?
Well, it's about 2.5, 3 hour drive. We
Two and
have
a half, three
way
hours.
better
Okay.
fishing though.
Ah,
So
okay. Do you fish?
I do fish. I do fish. I'm
Okay.
not like an avid fisherman like some people are. I'm more like where my dad
Yeah.
or my friends take me and then can you make my hook for me? But
That's awesome. I love it. That's great. Very cool. Well, girl, I'm excited to have you on the show today. Just to kind of bring people into the conversation, you came to just in a conversation that we were having with your sister, who is Lori Hinesley. And Lori, for those of you who may be listening that don't know, we have an organization called the Bridge House, and the Bridge House is a nonprofit organization in which Lori has been and her family have been very part of for quite some time. And during her time of being part of it, she was talking about her sister Jamie, and we do a lot in the foster care space at the Bridge House, and working with a lot of families in need, kids that are aging out of foster care, kids that are currently in custody. And so with that, Lori's like, man, I would love it if you'd connect with my sister Jamie. And I'm like, man, I'd love to hear her story. And Jamie, you and I started chatting just for a few minutes, and right out of the gate, I was just blown away by one, I think your level of transparency with somebody that has gone through a lot, and your willingness to just be very open about what you've gone through and how your life was radically changed, and just with what you've gone through, and just the end result really of your life now and what God has done is truly remarkable. And I know when you and I were talking, and this is, I think, why this conversation is so special, is because in the foster care space, I think there is this kind of there can be kind of this hero villain mentality where you'll talk to foster parents all the time, even on podcasts, or even there's a movie coming out, Possum Trot, and it's like all about the foster parents and the caseworkers and the kids, and those are all like really, really great things, no question about it. But there's also the side of the birth families, and 55% of kids are going to go eventually back home with their birth families. And we both know that there's God cares about the whole picture. He cares about the birth family. He cares about the foster family. He cares about the child. He cares about the caseworker. And so I think it's really important to shed light onto the whole picture and the whole family, because God works in both areas. And a lot of times I think we miss the birth family area. And I don't know fully why that is, because I know personally with when I fostered a young girl, we saw a miracle happen in her birth family in which she was reunited with her family, which obviously was a huge win for her. And so that was something that my wife and I were very keen on making sure that we developed and that we fostered while we were having her in our home, that we also really worked alongside that family as well too, so that they could get their kids back. But I'm going to shut up for a minute and just let you kind of chat, because I'd love to kind of just hear, obviously you're from Alaska, but just kind of walk us through your story. I'd love to kind of hear how the foster care space affected you, and just kind of bring us into that picture, of this story of foster care, of you being having kiddos and kind of going through this journey.
I think it's important to know that, like, obviously, horrible things happened in my life, and I did not handle them in the way that I should have, honestly, as a mother and as an adult. But so backstory on why all this started happening was, I got married very young to my high school sweetheart, and we had a party life. We were super young in a small
Sure.
town, and there was really not much to do. So we did party way more than we should. And then I got into a car wreck actually, and I had my kids in the car, Axel and Ellie. Ellie was almost 3, and Axel was almost 5, and it no Axel was 5, and it Ellie didn't make it. Ellie passed away in it, and then my high school
Oh my
sweetheart, he
gosh.
left me, and I was devastated. I was completely crushed. And when you're already living in a party and lifestyle and something like that happens and you don't have a
Hmm.
relationship with Jesus or anything or any good foundation,
Yeah.
it's super easy to go way deeper into that party and lifestyle. And that's what happened to me. I spent so much time thinking about the fact that Ellie died, and I never really thought about the fact that Axel lived.
Hmm.
And that was huge. And it was a lot easier for me to not think about Ellie dying if Axel wasn't right there needing a snack, needing me to do something for him. And I mean, I know that
Hmm.
sounds horrible,
Sure.
but that's what, drugs and alcohol do to you. They make you completely
Yeah.
selfish and self-centered.
Yeah.
We were blessed enough that his grandma on his dad's side, she stepped up, and she is actually the one that took him in.
Okay.
And I think the most amazing part about that is that when you have someone who cares for children that much,
Hmm.
she taught me that if you do what's in the best interest of the child, you'll rarely screw up.
Mm.
Meaning, when I was doing good, when I had a spout of sobriety, I was able to see my son. I was able to have overnights. She made
Yeah.
sure that even when I wasn't doing well, um, she was there, and we would do Christmas stuff. We would do birthday stuff. So Axel had his mom in his life.
Sure.
And I got really good for a minute there, really, really good. And I was sober. I actually married this amazing man who was like my soulmate. He was the best guy in the world.
Yeah.
But then on our wedding night, he had some drinks and a fluke happened. And I don't know if you guys know about pancreatitis, but it can either happen because you drink a lot, a lot, a lot. It can happen to someone who drinks a couple drinks. And while he drank on our wedding night, he got sick on our wedding night, and then he spent 2 months dying of
Oh my
pancreatitis in the
gosh.
hospital. And that was
Oh
our
my
whole
gosh.
marriage. And I still didn't know the Lord. I knew of him. And so when that
Yeah.
happened, I remember crying to my dad, like, why does God hate me so much? Like, people
Yeah.
don't
Sure.
bury their kids, people don't bury their husbands on their honeymoon. This is not supposed to happen to me. And I used it as an excuse to go right back into drugs and alcohol. Um,
Okay.
uh, but then in 2016, God gave me the second best blessing after my kids, and he threw me in jail. And I'm not,
Jeez.
and people can
I thought
say
you
what
were
they
gonna say,
want.
you found your next soulmate or something like that.
No, he threw me in jail. And
Wow.
uh my life upgraded when I went to Wildwood. Like, I mean, all of a
Yeah.
sudden I had clean clothes, I had food. When I was in my addiction, I was had abusive relationships. All of a sudden, no one was hitting on me. Like, I was like, wow, everything's great. And they
Hmm.
had Bible studies in jail. And there was this
Hmm.
movement up here in Kenai back when I was in there where the religious volunteers were like on it hardcore. They'd come in like 2 or 3 times a week. We'd have ones that came in just to color in the dorms, and we'd be coloring, talking about Jesus, and they just
Wow.
got you so curious. And then, and it also probably helped for me that I had like my sister in my life, who she's just an amazing woman of God,
Yeah.
and so that also helped. And I remember it was August 16th, 2016, and it was 6 o'clock count, and I was in my cell, and
Hmm.
I was listening to the radio, and Carrie Underwood's song "Jesus Take the Wheel" came on, and I hate that song. Like, that song annoys me so much. But then
Oh
it
my,
just hit
you
me.
hated it because you actually hate the song or just because
Yeah,
of,
I think it's a dumb song. I'm sorry, Carrie Underwood.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love you.
okay.
I love most of your songs, but I hate
Yeah,
that song. I do.
that's
I still
hilarious.
do. But I love
Yeah.
the song at the same time because there's not much to listen to. You have when you're in jail. I don't know if you guys know this, but you got like this little radio. And when you're in Kenai, Alaska, we already only have like 2 or 3 stations: an oldies, a country, and what they say
Right,
latest
right.
hits. But really, they're still playing hits from 1990. So I don't know if it's really latest
Right,
hits.
right.
But we have like no. And when you're in your cell that's full of cement, sometimes you get one
Hmm.
choice. So I had this one choice. So I'm listening to it, and
Yeah,
the chorus came on where she said, save me from the road I'm on. I can't do this on my own. I'm letting
right.
go. And it hit me. And I
Mm.
legitimately fell on my knees, and I just started bawling. And you don't cry in jail, but I was bawling. And I was
Yeah.
like, I am so sorry. I'm done. I'm done. I am sorry. I am done. And that's all I could pray. And
Hmm.
I was done. And I continued to follow Jesus. When I got out of jail, I had 2 phone numbers. I had a religious, Shelley O'Gwen, who I actually just had lunch with yesterday. She's my dear, dear friend. I had her number, and she was a
Hmm.
volunteer, and she had given it to a CO, a correctional officer, to give to me. And I had
Yeah.
my drug dealer's number. And I
Okay.
had that choice at 7 a.m. And I was like, who am I going to call? And I called
Mm.
Shelley. And then she picked me up. We went and got me clothes because I definitely didn't fit into the clothes I was wearing when I went in. And she took me
Sure.
to church because it was a Sunday. And then the next day, she took me to women's Bible study. And that just formed my foundation.
Mm.
And I think when it comes to the kids in the foster care is I was able to get back into my son's life that day. Shelly actually after church took me out to Nancy's house, and I was able to do a late Christmas with my son. And
Mm.
um so Nancy got custody, that's his grandma, got custody of my kid
Hmm.
back in 2010. In
Hmm.
2016, I never got custody back of him. And I know a lot of people would look down on me, and they're like, well, why wouldn't you? Why would you not get custody of your son? Like, you're living a great life now, and, that's
Sure.
just so wrong. But it goes back to doing what's in the best interest of the child. My son was in a really great home, and because Nancy is the woman she is, we literally shared custody. Axel has a room at my house. He has a room at her house. And before, when
Mm.
I was living in a transitional living center, he didn't have a room at my house. I
Yeah.
had a room at her house. Like, I
Wow.
would go out there, have dinner, stay the night, spend time with my child. I am incredibly blessed with the way it worked out for me. But also, I think when the foster family can bridge that gap, it's amazing. I have a friend, and her kids were in the foster care system, and we were in the darkness together, and her kids were in the foster care system for an incredibly long time, where
Hmm.
the state said, you're not getting your kids back. Like, you are
Right.
not. We're sorry. It's been too long. We're adopting them out. You're not getting them. Well, she
Okay.
has her kids back, and she has a
Wow.
home. But the best part about it is those foster parents that loved her 2 kids so much, that
Hmm.
wanted her kids forever, they still pick those kids up for overnights.
Wow. I
They
love
still
that.
go out and, take them to Seward, and like they have family
Mm.
time. They still go to all the dance recitals and everything.
It's
And I think
awesome.
I think that should be the end goal. Like,
Yeah.
foster family and birth family loving this child or these kids and doing whatever is in their best interest to give them the best life possible.
Yeah. Man, there's so much to unpack through all this. And uh, this is probably one of my most favorite podcasts, to be fully honest with you. I think because of it's the just the variety of various different things that are in this conversation and how it directly impacts so many people in all walks of life, whether it's the birth families, whether it's the child, or whether it's the foster family. You know, I kind of want to rewind a little bit and kind of go back. You mentioned, just so we can kind of understand the timeline really quick. So you're in high school, you get married, you have Axel is how old, and how old
Uh,
was, is it Ellie? Is that right?
yeah, Axel was 5. Ellie, well, let's see, they're 18 months apart. She was almost 3.
Yeah.
So no, Axel was 4. I have to like
Okay.
think back on that. Axel was born in 2005 and Ellie was born in 2006 and my car
Okay.
wreck was in 2009.
Okay. Gotcha. So how old were they in when you were in the car wreck?
Ellie was 2, almost 3, and Axel was 4.
Okay. Gotcha. And so obviously that's like super traumatic, losing a child at that age. I can't even imagine that, Jamie. And then going and kind of fast forwarding to where you end up meeting somebody that you feel like you could spend the rest of your life with, and then having another death in your life. I think it could be really easy. You know, anyone that goes has experienced losing a loved one, losing a child. Um, it could be very easy for there to be such a hardened heart towards God and towards life. And that's I mean, I'd love for you to kind of just maybe walk us through your journey through that space as it relates to, I mean, because obviously I'm sure there's still grief and still things that you go through with that. And, you know, talk to those out there that are in that space, and just how you kind of got through that, are getting through that. Because obviously that's super traumatic.
I think it's really hard if you don't really know God yet. Because I remember I tried to go to church after Justin died. I did.
Hmm.
And my first church service, the preacher was up there talking about how everything happens for a reason and God's plan. And if
Hmm.
when you don't truly know Jesus yet and you
Hmm.
lose someone like that, and then you have this person up there telling you, "Oh, it's okay because this happens for a reason." Oh, I got so mad. I got so,
Yeah,
so mad. I'm
sure.
like,
Yeah.
how?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of this?
Right.
So I guess my main advice is like, first you got to take a breath and you have to be able to be sad. Because I try so
Hmm.
hard to be strong the whole time. And then you just don't really grieve. Like I honestly don't feel I ever really completely grieved my daughter dying.
Hmm.
Because when you just mask it, you don't ever really feel it. And then it's always just there. I like to tell people it's like, so anyone who's a parent knows that like when people tell you what it's like to become a mom or a dad, and they try to
Hmm.
describe this love that you're going to have for your child and how like it's going to just complete your being, you're like, okay, I get it. Okay, get it. Oh, I cannot wait. Oh, I cannot wait. And then it
Hmm.
happens, and you're holding your child, and you're like, they lied. Like, this
Hmm.
is so much better than anything
Yeah.
anyone's ever told me. And that's
Yeah.
how I feel it is when people describe a relationship with Jesus. Like, my
Hmm.
sister, she followed God for such a long time, and I've had other people in my life that did too. And she's trying to
Hmm.
sit here and tell me, like, how wonderful life is. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great. That sounds great. I would love for that. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome. And then once you actually have it though, and you
Hmm.
actually feel the peace and the love of that, you're like,
Yeah.
girl, you lied. Like it is so much better than you
Wow.
described. And I was actually inside Wildwood last week because I do religious volunteering in there now, trying to help other women. And I was telling them that about aligning your life with God and how it makes everything so much better because I was telling them that when my daughter and my husband died, I just knew of Jesus. I didn't know him.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
when everyone told me, how did you get through that? How did you get through that? I used to always tell them, it's my mama. Okay. Like my mama,
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't for my mama, I don't know what I would have done. My mama was there for me. What I can't
Mm-hmm.
ever imagine doing is losing my mama. So I told everyone my whole, like, since it happened, I was like, if my mama goes, I don't know how that's going to happen because who's going to help me through my mom? Because she's the one who helped me through everything.
Sure.
Um, and I still went back to drugs, even with my mom's help, but my mom did help me see me through those. But this last year in January, my mom did die and
Mm.
she wasn't here.
Well, I'm
Um,
sorry.
and and I honestly, but I have Jesus now. And
Mm-hmm.
the volume of how I never thought I could lose my mom without my mom, because my mom helped me through losing my child and my husband. And
Mm-hmm.
I still went to drugs, even with my mom's help. But without my mom, who is my complete support system and like my rock, I did not go back to drugs when she died, no
Mm.
matter how devastating it was, because now I have Jesus.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think that should speak volumes to what a true relationship with Jesus does for you. He
Yeah.
gives you the strength when you are weak. Like it's not just some Bible verse we sing about. Like he
Right.
legitimately gives me the strength when I cannot do it on my own. And when I
Mm.
don't have him, I turn to drugs and alcohol instead.
Mm. Yeah, that's so powerful. Uh, I mean, I couldn't agree more with you on that. You and I shared that as well. That my mom recently passed away about a year. I guess it's going to be a year in August, and it came out of nowhere. And as someone even that was following Jesus for uh, my pretty much my whole life, I can tell you that I immediately felt like my heart become very hard towards a lot of things. And if it wasn't for the Lord, I can guarantee you that I think I probably would have dealt with it a lot differently. And I think also just in having a conversation with someone recently about how they have a loved one that's passing as well. And her and I were both talking, and she made a comment. She said, "I don't know how people get through this life without God. Like, I just don't understand how anybody who is going through life could truly get through life without Christ." And it really is kind of that encouraging thing, and to keep you forward and to also heal you now. Obviously we have our scars, we have our wounds, and there's things that trigger us still, with loss and things that we go through that cause us to mourn and grieve someone that we love so dearly. But that relationship with Jesus gives us the hope for tomorrow. It gives us the ability to know that home is heaven, and that our home isn't here. And I think that there's a peace that comes with that, right? That
Mm-hmm.
helps us be able to navigate that journey. So that's really encouraging. I appreciate you sharing that. And so with kind of going through that with Ellie, your husband, and here you're in this position now with Axel, and um, Axel ends up going with your mom Nancy. Is that correct? Or
Yeah,
his
it's his
yeah yeah
his grandma Nancy, yes.
yeah his grandma Nancy, yeah. And was with her, and then you said the best thing that happened to you was that you went to jail,
Yes.
which it's funny because it's really funny you say that, because when there was one of our values at the Bridge House is radical hospitality, and to be
I love that
to
book.
be what's that?
It's a great book.
It is a great book. And with that, like, when it comes to radical hospitality, I always tell our team, I say radical hospitality, and I've said this, may be a jail cell for somebody. Like,
Hmm.
radical hospitality may be more of a therapeutic foster home or a group home or a residential home for a kiddo versus a foster home, because it's really more about knowing, like, the Lord knowing what they need, and then you can still, even in that place of what they need, still do a great job loving them, right? You can
Hmm.
still, whether they're in jail or whether they're in a group home, or someone's in a residential home or whatever, or a foster home, like, you can still show them hospitality and love and care as a human being and wrap around them. And the Lord knows what they need in that time in their life for them to really be able to have an awakening and healing that they need to be able move through trauma and to be able to come out whole. And so I think it's really interesting that while you were in jail, you said that was the best thing that happened to me in my life. Because how long were you
It,
there for?
well, that time it was only April to, and I got out in December, so it wasn't too
Okay.
long.
Okay.
Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, I did a few stints in there. I also think it's important that the family members that have the addicted daughter or son or
Hmm.
sister pray. Like,
Mm,
prayer does not like it doesn't always answer right away, but I can
right.
guarantee you I would not be here today if it wasn't for my sister and my mom and her
Mm,
husband. And my sister told me like she had her small group church praying, like they just prayed
yeah.
for me so much over all the years, over all the struggles. And
Wow.
it does work because would I have come to the Lord if I didn't have all those extra prayers? And then it was actually Nancy when I was in jail, the reason it started becoming my not only did my life upgrade, but she told me one day, she goes, well, just work on yourself. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, you have a good blessing there. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? She goes, as an adult, how many people get the opportunity to sit there for a year and not worry about where their food is, not worry about how to pay for their utilities, not worry about their clean clothes. Like you have absolutely nothing to worry about. All your basic needs are met. You have
Mm,
all this time in the world to sit there and work on you and become
mm,
the person you want to be. And not everyone
mm,
gets that luxury as an adult. She's like, so
right.
don't waste it. Like,
Yeah. And you didn't.
no.
Yeah. That's incredible. And so when you got out, and you said you were confronted with those two numbers that you had, one which kind of represents the old lifestyle in which you could easily go back to, and then kind of a new beginning. Did you feel kind of a pull towards that old lifestyle, or was it like a no-brainer, I'm going right towards, what's new, or was there kind of like, oh man, like you still kind of felt a pull to go back?
I think the devil works on you double time on there, where
Yeah.
I didn't want to live the life I was living. Like that lifestyle had no desire to me, but was I worthy and did I deserve to live a different life at that point?
Wow.
Because that hits you. Like, look at how long I haven't been a mom to my son. And like,
Yeah.
and one thing that really like just tore me apart was OCS didn't have to come in and take my kid from me. I
Hmm.
willingly signed the custody over. So I was like, what kind of person does that?
Sure.
And I was just so selfish. And I just, and it hurts me. Like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. um, it was a rough decision because I didn't think I deserved a better life than the life I already was living due to the choices I had made while in
Mm.
my sin.
So it was really not so much where you were, hey, I want to go back to this lifestyle of drugs and alcohol, but really more like looking at it and saying, man, I don't know that I deserve to be able to move forward. And so that was more how the enemy was kind of working in your life, not so much like, hey, here's the party life, but more, hey, you don't deserve this, Jamie. You don't, because of the decisions you made. Like, and so out of kind of your depravity of just feeling discouraged, that would have been the reason of why you would have gone back,
Yeah.
out of just pain uh, and hurt and not feeling you're not feeling the identity in which Christ said that you had, which I think
Hmm.
is, dude, that is so real. And I think, there, I recently heard somebody say, I think, I can't remember who the pastor was, but he was talking about how the the goal of the enemy is always to try to bring man, or woman, man, to the place of just despair. A lot of times we get hung up on a specific sin that maybe the enemy is tempting us with, but really the end goal is that we would end up making so many poor decisions that we would end up being in a place of despair. So for example, if it's, let's say immorality and you have an affair on your wife, well, sure, that's the temptation of immorality, but what happens then at that point is, his goal really isn't so much that as much as it is to bring you into a place of despair to where you feel like you've lost everything. There's no way
Hmm.
you can move forward. There's no going forward. And so you might as well just continue down this dark place, whether that be suicide or drug use, or even more, immorality or whatever, that you're just continuing to just feed yourself, not because necessarily that you want it, but more because of the fact that you just feel like you're unworthy to move forward and there's no hope. And when I heard that, I was like, man, that is so true. And then going back to that verse of how, the enemy comes to seek, kill, and destroy in our life. And sure, it may be those, we think of it as those like, oh, that drug or that alcohol or that immorality or whatever. But really it's to bring us to a place of total despair where we don't feel like we have any value to move forward. And so I think that's a real talking point there to highlight, because it's such a true thing. And in that moment, obviously the Holy Spirit worked in you to say, you know what, no, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to take a step. And next that same day you said you were in church, right?
The same day, yeah. I think what it is that those church volunteers, they simplify it for you.
Yeah.
They just like kept saying, you just got to do the next right thing. You just have to do
Mm-hmm.
the next right step. And so it broke it down to where I was like, I don't really deserve a better life than the life I was already living.
Okay.
But I can call this number,
Mm-hmm.
and I can have her pick me up.
Right.
And I did. And that was a nerve-wracking wait for her to come, because when you don't really like when you someone just volunteers in Wildwood and you're like
Yeah.
just this, as you feel, horrible person, like
Sure.
that.
Sure.
I mean, I couldn't even button my pants. I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to be like with this wonderful lady and go talk to her? Like I have, my pants are like wide open, and she's so
Mm-hmm.
put together, and it's Sunday morning, and she just picked me up and she goes, well, let's go to Walmart and get you some pants to fit. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Just doing
I
that
could do
next,
that.
that next thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then finding a good church too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, so I started going to New Life Assembly of God up here in Kenai, Alaska.
Oh,
Amazing
okay.
church. And I love it so much because when I first started going, we had what we called like the felons section.
Yeah.
And there's this section of the church where like all the religious volunteers sat, and then all the people
Okay.
that came out of Wildwood were sitting too. And we had like
Okay.
our own little church gang there. And it was
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
comforting. But what really sold me, and this is why I tell people, if you go to a church that doesn't sit right with you, go
Mm-hmm.
try a different church,
Yeah.
because not every church is for every person. You have to
Right.
find your home.
Right.
And New Year's Day, I got baptized at that church. And when I knew I was
Wow.
going to definitely stay at that church is when I got up there and Pastor Steve was like, hey, like tell us a little bit about why you want to dedicate your life to Jesus. And I told the church,
Mm.
I stood in front of that congregation. And I told them about how I came from Wildwood, and I started pointing out the
That's
volunteers
awesome.
that helped me.
Yeah.
And afterwards, every single person in that church, no one looked down on me.
Mm.
Nobody like shunned me. Every single person just like hugged me afterwards and like, we're so glad you're here. Oh, we're so happy for you. Like, oh, what a blessing.
Wow.
And accepted me. Every single person accepted me. So I think
Wow.
if you go to a church where you don't feel accepted, just go to a different one, because you're going to find your home.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is powerful. I mean, the local church truly is, I believe that the Lord uses the local church in such a powerful way. Whether it comes to anything in our life, that the Lord can provide what we need through the local church. And you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. Just because, you leave and the Lord brings you to a different church that is your home, it doesn't mean that that church is a bad church, or that,
Mm-mm.
isn't fulfilling the things that the Lord has called that church to fulfill. It just means that God is, bringing you to a place to where he wants you to be, with a group of people he wants you to be part of in that community. So I think that's absolutely amazing that the local church was kind of the family, the community that you found that really helped you be able to continue forward in your journey. And obviously you're in a small town too. The funny thing is, which I didn't tell you, is that I'm actually credentialed through the Assemblies of God as well too. So I think that's kind of
Oh.
cool that that it's an Assemblies of God church. Yeah, that's neat.
Yes.
I love that. Um, so so you're in this church, and is that the church that she brought you to originally? Is that
Yes.
same church? Okay,
Yep.
gotcha. So she brought you to that church. You're in it. You're doing your thing, and then Axel was at what age at this point now?
11, just
11.
turning
Okay.
12. Yeah.
So he's about to turn 12 years old, and he's staying with his grandma, and you guys are now kind of sharing this visitation and
That
life
took, yeah,
with him.
yeah, yeah, that took a while. Like, so I was staying at Transitional Living Center, which is
Okay.
part of the Leash Centers for domestic violence victims. And so it's a
Okay.
safe place to go because I was in a really bad relationship before I went in there. And
Okay.
so that's where I got my life back together at. He would stay the night with me every now and then there, but a domestic violence shelter or transitional center ideally isn't the best place for a child.
Sure. Yeah.
That's where I would get passes from there to go stay the night at Nancy's. And so for the first part,
Okay.
it was mainly me going out to Nancy's and staying the night just because and then once when I got my own place, okay, actually the Lord, yeah, sometimes you want to twist what the Lord says for you to do.
Sure.
So I haven't been the perfect Christian the entire time since I turned my life over to Jesus. I remember, so I left the Transitional Living Center, moved in with a guy and was living in sin. And I started doing
Hmm.
Priscilla Schreier's Armor of God Bible study, which is a
Okay.
powerful, life-changing Bible study. I
Yeah.
suggest everyone to do it a few times in their life. And it came to this part where what's interfering with your walk with God? And I was like, oh, I'm living in sin. I shouldn't do this. And really,
Mm,
God was trying to tell me I shouldn't be in this relationship.
mm,
Well, me being the manipulator I am and the person I am, I was like, no, 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 I'm going to marry this guy. And so I married him,
sure.
who was not a man who followed God. You have to be evenly yoked with somebody.
Yeah.
And we actually are divorced now, and I am living alone now, which is, I think, God's plan for me. But when I moved in with him, I started getting time with Axel, and he had his own room at that house,
Mm.
um, and that's how that went. But yeah, walks with God aren't always straight. Sometimes you try and
No, they're
detour off
not.
what he wants for you,
Sure. Yeah. And I
and
mean, that's again, I think just such an important piece. Like I think a lot of times we want the movie kind of picture where it's like, okay, Jamie gets out of jail, and then after she gets out of jail, she finds Jesus, and now her kids are rejoined with her, and life is great. And you know, that the reality of that is that we're human beings, we work through things, and we're constantly wrestling
hmm
through things. And but I always tell my kids this. I say, listen, God isn't, there's no way you can live a perfect life. Like, you're not going to live a
hmm
perfect life. And I said, if you could live a perfect life, then there's no reason for Jesus to have lived a perfect life. And so it's important that we remember we're going to make mistakes. And even in our best foot forward of trying to say, hey, we are, maybe from the outside, people are looking and saying, man, look at this individual and how they follow the Lord. I mean, even in our best efforts, the Lord still says, hey, they're still filthy rags. Like, we still are sinners. In
Yes.
Jeremiah, it says that no man knows the depths of his heart and how wicked it is. And so we are wicked people who need a savior all the time and need his grace to continue to just come around us and teach us and pull us forward. And it's this race, right? It's this marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon of continuing to run and make a mistake, and then ask the Lord for encouragement and forgiveness to then move forward and keep pushing forward. And so I think that's a very more realistic view in a lot of ways of the journey. I think, and I think anyone that would probably that's lived a life following Jesus, whether they're a pastor or grew up in church, or someone that was radically saved like yourself, will say, man, talk about highs and lows and working through them and wrestling with them, and I think that's that relationship, right? That when we say we have a
hmm
relationship with Jesus versus maybe just knowing him or knowing of him, the relationship, I mean, any person that's been in a relationship knows there's conflict, there's wrestling, there's mistakes, and there's repentance. And I think the same is true with our relationship with the Lord. So it's a much more realistic view, I think, of what you're sharing than maybe what sometimes people want to see when, or maybe even again, kind of like the enemy pushing people back to despair and saying, oh, well, you were supposed to have followed Jesus this certain way, and so now you didn't. So maybe you should go back to your old lifestyle because you made a mistake, and you've made multiple mistakes. And it's like, dude, no, that's not it at all. Like, his grace is there to forgive us and keep pushing us forward. So I love that you're willing to share that. Thank you.
I share everything. I say, hell, I want an open book because, like, if people don't know how dirty and grace horrible my life got, then they don't know they can't
Yeah.
tell the glory that God's worked in me. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's really special. And so Axel's like, you said 11, about to be 12, kind of in that space. And the beauty that I really love about just kind of this journey is that he, obviously, like you said earlier, a lot of people were thinking like, why wouldn't you take Axel back home now? But you shared custody of Axel with Nancy, over the course of the time that she was alive. And now is Axel with you now, or
no, no.
where's his
So
journey now?
my own mom, Lynn, died. Nancy's still
Oh,
alive.
okay. I'm sorry. Got
Yeah,
you. Okay. Gotcha.
that's his grandma on his dad's
Okay.
side. And no,
Gotcha. I'm following you now.
yeah, no, he's 19 now, and we just do our family thing. Like
Yeah.
I go out, we do family dinners almost every week. Right now,
Okay.
she's got some family visiting, so we didn't do it this week. But
Okay.
I spend every Christmas out there. We spend
Wow.
every birthdays together. Like,
Wow.
she is my other mother. She's been a part of my life since I was 15 years old, because that's when I started dating her
Wow.
son. So we
Wow.
just, we have a very unique and special family dynamic that
Yeah.
we don't have to, like, when if Axel wants to come over, well, he's 19 now, so he can do whatever he wants. But
Yeah.
when he was
Yeah.
under when he was under 18, if he wanted to be over here,
Yeah.
she's like, okay, go to your mom's house. If you want to be out there,
Sure.
okay, go to your grandma's house. And that's just kind
Right.
of how we did it. And it there was no need to just be like, okay, well, I'm better now. Let's go to the courts. Let's rip him away from Nancy. I want him at my house all the time so I can prove to everyone else how great I am.
Mm.
And
Wow.
that's how I felt it would have been for me. Like,
Yeah.
if you have the ability to share the way that
Mm.
I did, I don't see why you would just take, because it's not like she was his safe spot. His sister died,
Mm-hmm.
his mama went on the craziness, like his dad
Mm-hmm.
became a workaholic, and
Mm.
there was Nancy. And
Mm.
why would you, if you truly love this child, just rip him from that?
Wow.
And also, why would you disrespect somebody and hurt someone so bad that stepped up and played your role for all those years without
Wow.
hesitation?
Yeah. That's so good. I think it is a challenge I can see where foster families would, and that everybody has different dynamics too, especially I think a lot of times when that's what's so tough about fostering is people bring these kids into their home and maybe they can't have their own bio kids. And so they become even more emotionally attached to these kids. Or sometimes they do have their own bio kids and this kid just fits in like a glove to their home. And mom or dad or both are not meeting, any of the expectations that the court has put out for them. And maybe they've been very selfish and negligent or whatever. And they're seeing, like you said, like where the child is, they're playing that role for them in their life, taking them to school, getting them the things that they need, taking them to basketball games, sporting events, whatever. And they're being that for them. And then, if they continue to see the birth parents not doing what they need to do, and then that affecting the child in a really hard way, the very easy thing to do would become to have a hardened heart towards that family. And I think really the most important thing to remember from the beginning, like if there's foster families that are listening from the beginning, and it's so important that people know this, that you're not fostering a child, you're fostering a family. Like you're
Hmm.
deciding to immerse yourself in the middle of an entire blended family and you're part of it now. And with that comes a responsibility of saying, maybe they are dropping the ball, maybe there are tons of missed expectations, but you're at least saying, hey, I'm going to be praying for that family, that the Lord would do something in them so that they would be able to be the father and mother that they need to be for this child. And then you're praying for the child too, and maybe, like you said, an opportunity to where you can do this together in some spaces. And I actually know a family in upstate New York that has had some of these situations too, where they have kind of become that blended family, and they have this kiddo who they have had since he was just a young boy, I think a baby actually, and he's still involved in their life, and will come over and spend the night, and they go to his games, and they treat him just like their own son. But he doesn't live with them. They don't have custody of him. But he gets the ability to be loved by his birth mom and be loved by this family. And there's not this like war and trying to pull him to and compete, that competitiveness of that can happen. What would you say to people that maybe are in this space, whether it be a foster parent or, let's start with them, foster families that are maybe a little frustrated with birth moms or birth dads? Or
As hard as it is, I would say the first responsibility is to protect the child. There's been plenty of times in my addiction where Nancy couldn't let Axel see me because it was for his best interest. And I've said some incredibly hurtful things to her in that time period. But now I thank her more than anything. So it just goes back to what Nancy taught me. You do what's in the best interest of the child. If the birth family is not healthy for the child at the moment, then you pray and you try to help them, but you also have to protect that child. The top priority is the kid, and that's, at the end of the day. So that means when the birth family is doing better and they are really healthy again, you have to relinquish some of that child back to them because it's also in the best interest of the child. And that part, I've never been on that side, so I can't imagine what it's like for foster parents who save these children from the life that they were living with their parents that weren't doing well, and watch the parents just make horrible choices. Like, that'd be so hard to trust that person for that kid again. I mean, I don't know how they do it, because if I knew me now back then,
Sure.
I don't know if I could be like, oh yeah, here's the child back. Like,
Right.
that is so hard. But I think they just need to look at success stories too, because there's so many success stories of people who recovered from their addiction, recovered from their stuff, and all they want
Right.
is a family life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. What would you say to the, birth families that maybe don't have their kiddos and are kind of wearing your shoes while you had your kiddo, that didn't have custody with your kiddo?
To be grateful. Like, I've seen so many in my addiction. I saw so many parents that, like, so when I went far down, my son never had to couch help with me. My son didn't have to go to trap houses with me. My son didn't have to like experience all these things that I experienced because Nancy had
Sure.
him. So if you have a home where someone is willing to take up your role and protect your child from everything bad that's going on in your life, isn't that something to be grateful for?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I didn't think I deserved a better life, but I always knew Axel deserved a better life than the life I was living.
Sure.
And I think every true parent can tell you that they want better for their child than they have.
Yeah.
And so if you're not well right now, there's no judgment there. Like, that happens. Like, we can find a way to move forward. Like, get connected to some people, go to rehab, rehabs didn't really work for me. It had to be Jesus for me. I'm not like, I don't want to like
Sure.
say,
Sure.
oh, rehabs aren't worth it, but
Right.
I
Right.
was in and out of rehabs. It was Jesus that saved me.
Yep.
But while your kid is having in a loving home that's protecting them, that's feeding them, that's fostering them, that's helping them thrive, don't hate on those people. Like,
Sure.
you can't
Sure.
you can't hate on them. They are
Right.
doing what's best for your child and waiting
Right.
for you to get better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. I love that you shared that. And it is such a hard spot. The water is very muddy. It takes a lot of wisdom and a lot of discernment to be able to navigate through it. And there's like you said, there's so many key players that are all in that space. But at the end of the day, I totally agree that it is in what's best interest of the child. And that could be at times, like you said, where parent isn't being able to, or bio
Hmm.
family isn't able to see the child. And then yet at the same time, the the times where it is in the best interest of the child to be reunited with mom or dad in some context. And I think that's really the prayer, right? That's what it comes down to, in the
Hmm.
sense of whether you're a birth family, foster family, fill in the blank. Um, Lord, show me what's in the best interest of the child, as I'm fostering, as I'm a birth parent, like what is in the best interest for him or her, and give me wisdom to be able to lead them in the appropriate way. Give the caseworkers wisdom, the judges wisdom, and all that space, because it's hard. There's a ton of players that are in that space, and so I think that you just did a great job kind of unpacking what that would look like. Tell me a little bit about, kind of as we're kind of wrapping up, what are you doing now? So you're kind of fast forward. I know you said you kind of Axel's, I love his name, by the way. Is that because you're a Guns N' Roses fan?
It is because I didn't work when I was pregnant, and Behind the Music, Guns N' Roses came on like a lot because VH1 had a lot of those reruns back then, when
Yeah,
back in the
yeah, yeah.
day, and you can only hear Axel so many times, and,
Right, right.
and so we're like,
That's a
that's it. And then
that's
also we
it. I
always
love it,
figured,
man. He got named after Axl Rose. Come on, that's
and
amazing.
then we always thought that, hey, if we have a daughter next, who's going to want to mess with Axel's little sister?
That's
No one.
right. Yeah, that's a
So
tough
yeah.
name, man. 100%. I love it. That's great. But Axel's, he's 19 now. Nancy's still, you guys are still living family together, and you guys are working back and forth and just loving on him. And obviously you guys have a good relationship. And you said you're part of, what was the name of the church that you're part of?
New Life Assembly of God.
New Life Assembly of
Uh,
God. Okay.
Yeah.
And, tell me a little bit else what you're doing. I think you said you mentioned some volunteering for other women as well too. And
Yeah, and so the Lord's blessed me. And I think that's the other thing that I really, my main mission and goal in life right now is just to tell people like how God can move mountains. Like when I say I live in a
yes.
small town, I mean I live in a small town that everyone knows everybody's business. It is itty
Yeah.
bitty bitty. Okay, even Anchorage is
Wow.
small compared to some of the places down in the States, and that's our big city.
Okay.
So everyone knows everyone's business, and this is a town that I grew amok in. Like this was a town where you heard my name and you're like, "Ooh, lock your doors. You don't,
Oh man.
and I was not a good person in this town. But because of the grace of God and following Jesus, like I am so blessed that He has completely transformed my life. I'm general manager of the most amazing hotel in Soldotna, Alaska, a hotel that probably would
Mm,
never have hired me back in the day, but now I'm running
wow.
it. And they have a lot of community outreach. The domestic violence shelter that I stayed in and found refuge in many, many times, I'm now on the board of directors for.
Oh
And
my
that's
gosh.
just amazing. I am also involved with prison ministry, going back into Wildwood.
Okay.
And I do a lot of stuff with my job with the chamber. Like I just got blessed to be able to be a judge at the Fourth of July parade, which is probably one of my biggest life accomplishments right now because I get to judge floats and I'm super excited about it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But I think the main goal in life is if you follow Jesus, He can make anything possible because the life I live today, I
Mm,
shouldn't live, let alone I should not be living my life today in the small town that I did what I
mm,
did in. But because
yeah.
Jesus can make anything possible, like
Yeah.
you hear my name now and they're like, oh, she volunteers, or oh, I saw her at a chamber meeting, or oh, she spoke at a borough
Mm,
meeting the other night. Like,
wow.
and that shouldn't be my life if it
Yeah.
wasn't for Jesus. And and my son, I'm gonna tell you guys all right now, because of the wise wisdoms of his grandma, like he is so well rounded. He is the nicest person you're ever gonna meet. He is actually working full time. Already he's going off to a trade school for something with computers. Don't ask me what it is because I don't understand it. I'm too old. But he's
That's
he
awesome.
starts in the fall and he's
Wow.
already paying on his tuition. He puts more money in a
Oh
savings
my
account than he
gosh.
spends. And that's all his
Golly.
grandma right there. And I
Yeah,
think the
that's
fact that
awesome.
because of the sharedness, he has a full life. He has his mama, he has his grandma, and he is just the
Yeah.
most well-rounded, happy, and the kindest child you ever meet. Like I don't think he's
Mm,
got a mean bone in his body. Um, and that's
wow.
a really great accomplishment that is mainly Nancy.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. Jamie, truly just an amazing story. And I can't thank you enough for just your transparency. I think a lot of times in life, it can be hard to be transparent because one, it can bring back open wounds. It can, obviously trigger us in ways that maybe we don't realize. But two, I think, there is a level of humility that it takes to be able to talk about our flaws and really kind of open up our lives for people to kind of look in. But I do think there's so much beauty that can come out of that, so that people can be encouraged to continue to move forward and really realize, like, man, my life is not hopeless. Like you said, Jesus can move mountains. Jesus can be able to take someone that is broken and make all things new and move us in a direction that we never thought possible. And a lot of times we can think, oh, well, we wasted so much time. And so how can God, he's the author of time, right? He can take an hour and turn it into a year. He can manipulate whatever he wants to manipulate to be able to accomplish his will. So we may feel like we're wasted and that we have lost too much time to ever have a solid relationship with maybe our kids or be who God's called us to be. But no, he's the author of time. He can change whatever he wants to change and manipulate it to be able to accomplish his will. And so if you're listening and there's been maybe situations in where you're feeling hopeless, you're feeling like, man, I'm discouraged, man, just like Jamie said, God can move those mountains. Keep forward, keep trusting him, and he'll get you through it. So Jamie, thank you for being on. My goodness, it's amazing. If I ever come to Alaska, I'm definitely going to come see you.
If you come to Alaska, you stay at an Aspen hotel.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. I'll call you. Yeah, because you're a hotel manager. So I'll just say, hey, I need a room.
Yes, it's the best hotels in Alaska. We got you.
All right. I love it. That's awesome. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for being on today. And we're just so thankful for your life and for your son and for Nancy, and just appreciate you. And excited to talk to you again soon.
Thank you.